In 1938, Zev Jabotinsky was scheduled to speak in Vilna, in Lithuania. And the Jewish Socialist Bund, the anti-Zionist Socialist Bund, put out a flyer which read in part, "To the Jewish workers and Jewish masses of Vilna, the spiritual father of Jewish fascism, Vladimir Jabotinsky, is coming to Vilna. Of late, this adventurer and political charlatan has become very popular. Jewish workers and Jewish masses, show your contempt for the Purim general and give him the military command, evacuate yourself from Poland. Down with fascism, down with Jabotinsky." Things never change. In the 1930s, it was Jabotinsky who was called the fascist. In the 1940s, it was Menachem Begin, the fascist. In 1985, it's Kahane, the fascist. But history will never record the little pygmies and dwarfs who called Jabotinsky a fascist. And history will forget the pygmies and dwarfs who called Begin a fascist. And history will forget the parasites of Israel, Shimon Peres and his parasites, and the JCRC in Los Angeles, because as Jabotinsky's name goes down in history, and as Begin's name goes down in history, so will it be that those people who call us fascists, they are the ones who someday will look back upon a Kach movement and Kahane because we are coming to power. And I want to speak to you this evening about the real fascists in Israel. Last month I spoke in the town of Givatayim, a suburb of Tel Aviv. A legal rally with a police permit in response to a previous rally in which the mayor of Givatayim, a Labor Party official, shouted, and his words were headlined in the Israeli papers, "Kill them while they're still small. Kill them while they're still small." And so, we met in Givatayim. 10,000 leftists from kibbutzim were bussed in from all over Israel. Hundreds of buses. They came with rocks, with iron bars. The Democrats of Israel, the ethical people of Israel, the ones who came with pipes and rocks in the name of democracy. They attacked my car, smashed the windows, tried to overturn the car. Those were the people speaking against fascism and against racism in the name of democracy. And as I watched the faces of those people, those thousands of twisted faces, twisted in psychopathic hate, I thought to myself, these are the faces of 40 years ago in Israel, the faces of that period known to this day in Israel as Hasizon, the season, the hunting season. In the 1940s, the leftists, Mapai and Mapam, the kibbutzim, hunted down Jewish members of the Irgun and the Sternists. They hunted them down. They kidnapped them, and they turned them over to the British. That is ethics. That is morality. That is love of Jews. And I remember a young Jewish boy, Yedidya Segel was his name, from Haifa. And he was kidnapped by a group. And he was tortured so that he would reveal names. And he died. They didn't mean to kill him, but they killed him. Yedidya Segel. And know who was the head of that main group of kidnappers? His name was Teddy Kollek. And know that these are the people, the leftists who speak of fascism. Invariably, as the rabbis say, kol haposel bimumo posel. One who condemns knows his own blemish. And I remember the Altalena, the Irgun ship, anchored off the shores of Tel Aviv, carrying weapons, badly needed weapons, which were gotten by money raised in this country by Ben Hecht. And they, as that ship was anchored, the Palmach fired on the ship. 22 Jews were murdered that day because Menachem Begin was on the ship and they wanted to liquidate Begin. And I remember who was the commander of the unit that fired on Jews and murdered Jews. His name was Yitzhak Rabin. And I remember the words of the Prime Minister the following day in the Knesset, and they are in the minutes. He said, Ashrei HaTotach HaKadosh, blessed be the Holy Cannon. Blessed be the Holy Cannon that murdered Jews. Don't talk to me of fascism. I know who the fascists were. Leftists who murdered Jews in cold blood. Those are the fascists. Democracy? Democracy? They speak of democracy after what they did to the Sephardic Jews in Israel? In 1948, 800,000 Sephardic Jews began to pour into Israel from Arab countries. These were the finest Jews that we had. Everyone a real Zionist, not a Herzl brand of Zionism. Herzl once said, if I believed that Jews could assimilate, I would advocate it. But since the Gentiles won't have us, we must have a Jewish state. That wasn't their form of Zionism. These were the Zionists who for 2,000 years prayed 3 times daily, V'techazena einenu b'shuvcha l'Tzion. May our eyes behold thy return to Zion. Every one of them came warm Jews, Zionists, religious Jews. And as they poured into Israel, 800,000 of them, one question went through the minds of the Labour Party government. And that question was, for whom will they vote? For whom will they vote? And that question meant more to them than the Jewish people and the Jewish state. For whom will they vote? Nationalist Jews and observant Jews, religious Jews. Will they vote for us, the socialists? And knowing the answer, they proceeded to destroy them as Jews. How many Jews have told me what happened to them personally in those years? Let me tell you about the democracy of the left in Israel. Jews who were placed in transit camps, Mabarot. If a Jew wanted a job, they asked him, are you a member of Histadrut? You're not a member? No job. Where is your Pinkas Adom, your literate booklet? No booklet, no job. They asked him, where does your child study? In what school? A religious school? No job. And they would tell him what to do. They would give him a slip of paper, a blank slip, and they told him, take the blank slip with your child to the Histadrut school and register him. Then the principal will stamp the paper. Then you take the stamped paper to the labor exchange and you will get a job. I remember what they did to Yaldei Teman, the children of Yemen. 10,000 Jewish children between the ages of 7 and 14 arrived in Israel in 1948 without their parents, under the auspices of Youth Aliyah. Every one of them, every Yemenite Jew was a religious Jew. They came to Israel with their Shabbat, with their Kashrut, with their Simanim, their earlocks that they called Simanim, signs, because that was the sign of a Jew in Yemen. They were a link in 2,000 years of Jewishness in Yemen. They came to the Holy Land, and they were placed in such holy institutions as Kibbutzim of Hashomer HaTzair. They ripped from them their Shabbat and their Kashrut and their Simanim. They ripped from them their self-respect. They were told, Abba u primitivi, your father is backwards. They gave them the values of Dizengoff Street. And so now when I hear Shimon Peres and his parasites screaming about the riffraff in Israel, Asafsuf, the riffraff, which is a code name for Sephardic Jews. Riffraff? If there is riffraff in Israel, who made them so? There is crime in Israel? Who made it so? I sat in Ramlet prison. I saw the Jewish prisoners. The overwhelming numbers, Sephardic Jews. That's the greatest crime that Israel has ever committed. How many Jewish murders were there in Yemen? Who knew what a Jewish murderer was in Yemen? How many Jewish prostitutes were there in Baghdad? Who knew from such a thing there? How many bank robbers in Morocco? There we never knew of these things. What the Muslims couldn't do to us in 1,500 years, Jews did to fellow Jews in Israel by taking from them their self-respect, their family pride, their Jewish values. They speak of democracy. For 37 years we waited for someone to reach the Knesset and say these things and give to them as they have given all these years. Well, I've arrived. I'm in the Knesset. I want a Jewish state, not just a Hebrew-speaking Portugal or Sweden or Los Angeles. I want a state in which young Jews know that they are Jews, so that I'll never again hear from a Sabra the words, I'm not a Jew, I'm an Israeli. I want Jewish schools that don't put out only Jewish doctors and Jewish pilots, I want a Jewish school that puts out good Jews who will be good doctors and good pilots. Two weeks ago, I presented a motion of no confidence in the government, in the Knesset. It was on the subject of mifgashim, which means meetings. Let me tell you what the problem is. The government of Israel, the Ministry of Education of Israel, in an effort to combat Kahanism, has embarked on an enforced program in which every Jewish youngster from first grade through high school must meet Arab students, visit an Arab village, stay for the weekend, and then Arabs will come and visit the Jewish town and stay for the weekend. If the Jewish Federation in Los Angeles would ever announce such a program, can you imagine? It is a program that opens up the doors wide to intermarriage and assimilation, to the destruction of Jews as Jews. For this we brought Jews from Morocco? For this? As if it's not bad enough without the program. There are 3,500 Jewish women today married to Arabs in Israel, married, and 10,000 living with Arabs, not married. The prostitutes in Israel are Jewish. The pimps are overwhelmingly Arab. This is the dream of Zion. This is anti-Kahanism. And when Yehudi Homia, the soul of a Jew yearns, it's just amazing. He just breaks down in sentiment. And he concludes with the stirring words, Hatikva bat shnot alpayim, the hope of 2,000 years, and tears roll down his cheeks as he says, how my Zayda waited 2,000 years for the Jews to come home. Is there one person in this room, a Nazi? Then the grandfather of Shulamit Aloni was also a Nazi. And the grandfather of every Jew sitting in this room was also a Nazi. I was in Beit Shemesh a few months ago, a development town. And the Jew came over to me, a man in his late 50s, and he said to me, I have 2 daughters, both married to Arabs. One lives in the Arab village of Taiba. And then he added the following words. He said, when I lived in Morocco, did I ever dream in my blackest nightmare that my daughter would go out with an Arab? I came to the Holy Land to have this happen to me. Who protests? Who speaks out against this? Who cares about it? Where are the religious parties? Where are the rabbis? We have a president named Herzog. He's obsessed with Kahane. Every night he goes to sleep with Kahane, wakes up in the morning with Kahane, has his coffee with Kahane. He visited a place in Israel called Neve Shalom, the oasis of peace. It's a settlement founded by an apostate Jew, a Jew from Hungary who converted and became a Coptic Christian. He's now a Dominican priest. And he founded this place where Jews and Arabs could live together, and I mean together. President Herzog visited Neve Shalom last month. And he said, this is a Keren Or. This is a ray of light in the Middle East. President Herzog's father, the late chief rabbi, is rolling over in his grave. Herzog speaks of Jewish values. This is a Jewish value. The Arab wakes up in his village. His name is Ibrahim. By evening, he's in Dizengoff Square. He walks over to the Jewish girl. Shalom, my name is Avi. Avi. Ibrahim Avi. And who cares? Who gives a damn? You go to the beaches in the summer and you see the cars parked along the beach, and you see the license plates. Shechem and Jenin and Tulkarm and Aza. What are they looking for? Water, sun? They're looking for Jewish girls. Because Arab girls don't go to the beach. Their fathers would kill them. So they find the Jewish girls because they have money in their pocket. They don't serve in the army. They work, they make money. And so it continues, the spiritual destruction of the Jewish people. And now, mifgashim. Now we are going to bring them together to make it easier. And who protests that? There was one person in Israel who protested it. His name was Sheikh Amin Tarif, head of the Druze community. That's a good Jew. He wrote to the chief rabbi of Haifa. He said, you must do something to stop this. Stop your Jewish girls from going out with our Druze boys. Where was the chief rabbi of Haifa? The tragedy is that if anyone thinks that this is a laughing matter, then he hasn't heard a word that I've said. The tragedy is that if a Jew gets up and cries out against this, those people across the way, racist. If I'm a racist, the Torah is a racist. The Talmud is racist. Judaism is racism. Our great-grandparents were racists. Racism, to want to keep the Jewish people one, that's the tragedy. Those who oppose Kahanism, in the end really oppose Judaism. And I want to save not only the Jewish soul, but the Jewish body. Every week in Israel, a Jew is murdered. Not in Lebanon, and not in the occupied territories of Yossi Sarit. Inside the Jewish state. Inside the Green Line. 3 weeks ago, 3 Jews were murdered in one day. A Jewish couple near Beit Shemesh. A 3rd Jew in the north, in Migdal Emek. Where were the protesters? Where were all the rabbis who on Yom Kippur, after the massacre in Beirut, in the refugee camps, got up and beat their breasts and condemned Israel because Muslims had murdered Christians? Where were the protests? And where were the tears for 3 Jews murdered? I don't even know if it made the Los Angeles Times. Every week, another Jew murdered. Every day a bomb is either found or explodes. The Jews of Israel today are afraid. For the first time, there is fear in Israel. A woman came to me in Kiryat Ata, outside of Haifa, and said to me, I'm afraid to let my child play in the streets at night. I want you to know that that is the end of Zionism. We left Minsk and we left Pinsk and we left Sana and we left Fez in order to have a Zionist state without fear, where Jews could walk freely and proudly and not afraid. So what has happened? We came to Israel and we built Minsk and Pinsk and Sana and Fez. 2 months ago I stood at the bedside of a 7-year-old boy. Alon Hananya was his name. He was in Hadassah Hospital on Mount Scopus. He lives in Neve Yaakov, a suburb of Yerushalayim. He was playing near a bus stop, and he stepped on a bomb. And as I stood by his bed, it dawned on me that he didn't yet realize that he had no leg. It's very difficult for a 7-year-old child to realize that he has no leg. You know when he realized that he had no leg? When he went home and his friends were playing soccer, football, then he realized that he had no leg. Who is to blame for all of these things? Just the Arabs? No, not just the Arabs. The Arabs and all the Jews who have such pity and such mercy on the Arabs. If I would have been the Prime Minister, Alon Hananya would have had his leg. The young Jewish couple would have been alive because there would have been no Arabs in Israel to murder them. And concerning that, did our rabbi say in the Talmud, Kol hamrachem al ha'achzar, sofo liot achzar al ha'rachaman. One who has mercy on the cruel will someday be cruel unto the merciful. It's not only civilians. Soldiers today are afraid. They're afraid to hitch rides in Israel. Shaltiel Akiva. There aren't two people in this room to whom that name means anything. Shaltiel Akiva was a 21-year-old soldier from the Yemenite town of Rosh Ayin. Rosh Ayin is right near Petach Tikva, in the heartland of Israel. He served 8 months in Lebanon without a scratch. And his father told me what happened on the night that he came back. He told me it at the funeral. Shaltiel Akiva returned from Lebanon. And he phoned his father in the evening. And he said, I'm at the Trumpiada, where the soldier hitch rides. 5 kilometers from home, 3 miles from home. He said, I'll be home in 15 minutes. Have supper ready for me. So they prepared supper for him. And they waited 15 minutes, and they waited an hour, and they waited all night. And the next day, the army brought his body. He had been murdered by Arabs 3 miles from Rosh Ayin. Moshe Tamam. Not one Jew in this room to whom that name means anything. Moshe Tamam was a 19-year-old soldier who hitched a ride with Arabs at Somet Betlit. That's 9 kilometers from Netanya, in the heartland of Israel. His body was found 4 days later. And know what they did to his body so that you'll understand with whom we deal. They gouged out his eyes, and they ripped off his sexual organs. And those who were in synagogue last week read a verse concerning Yishmael, which said, "V'hu yiyeh per adam," and he will be a wild man. Yado bakol, his hand against everyone. V'yad kol bo, and everyone's hand against him. That's the enemy. That's with whom we have to deal. And so Rabbi Schulweis and all the Rabbi Schulweises who sit and preach, but we must be ethical. I want to be ethical too. But to be ethical, you first have to be alive. And so Schulweis sits with his 5,000 person temple, with his $100,000 a year salary, not counting weddings, bar mitzvahs, unveilings, and funerals. And he babbles about morality and ethics, how easy it is to be in the valley, how green is his valley. But we have to live in the real world. People who murder Moshe Tamam in the way that they murder him. You want to know what the Arabs would do to us if the Schulweises would have their way? Do you know what they would do to us? Look at what they do to themselves every day in Lebanon, and then you'll know what they would do to us tomorrow if they had their way. My son came home from Milui, army duty, and he shows me a letter that he received from the army. Every soldier gets this letter. So I want to see the letter. A letter from Tzahal, the army, pride, Jewish, certainly. An army letter showed the Jewish pride. I want to see, give me some nachas, give me some Jewish pride. I read the letter, it says, Chayal soldier, be careful when hitching on the roads. Jewish soldier, in your Jewish state, on your Jewish highways, be careful, the Arabs might kill you. This is Zionism. For this we waited 2,000 years. We didn't come to Israel to die. We came to live. And all the attacks on me, and all the defamation, and all the name-calling on the part of the little pygmies and dwarfs will not stop me, with God's help, from forming the kind of government which will insist that Jews will live. The real problem is that liberals and leftists have contempt for Arabs. They think if we treat the Arabs nicely, and if we raise their living standards, and if we give them indoor toilets, then they will be good Arabs. Only liberals think that you can buy everything. You can buy a condominium, and you can buy a Cadillac, and you can buy a person's national pride. Well, you can't buy an Arab's national pride with an indoor toilet. What contempt they have for the Arabs. I've heard cabinet ministers speak. One cabinet minister spoke about how we took Arabs in 1948, illiterate Arabs, analphabetim, illiterate, couldn't read, couldn't write, peasants, falachim. And today, 4,000 Arab students studying in the universities of Israel. Ah, what joy. Do you know who the most dangerous Arabs of Israel are? The Arabs who are studying in the university. The revolution doesn't come from the numb and the dumb. The revolution comes from the intellectual. And we, in our insanity, are creating the future leaders of the PLO. Muhammad Mi'ari, who sits in the Knesset and is an open supporter of PLO, is a graduate of Hebrew University. I've long maintained that Jews have a touch of insanity. The Arabs of Israel love Israel. They're good citizens. Is there one person in this room who thinks that there's one Arab in Israel who enjoys living in a state which is defined officially as the Jewish state? Is there one person in this room who thinks that there is one Arab living in Israel who enjoys living in a state which has a law of return, which applies to Jews and not Arabs? Is there one person in this room who thinks that there's one Arab in Israel who enjoys living in a state which has a law which forbids leasing of public land to non-Jews? Can you imagine if Israel didn't have that kind of a law and I presented it as a bill in quietly? Now it's because they have no choice. They have no choice. But God forbid give them that opportunity. And they will do to us tomorrow what they did to us yesterday in the 1920s and 1930s. Jews have a memory that goes back about 2 weeks. So I'll tell you what they did to us in the 1920s and 1930s. They massacred hundreds of Jews. Arabs rushed into the street shouting, "Idbach al-Yahud," slaughter the Jew. There was no Kahane then. There was no Begin then. There was no Sharon then. There were no fascists around. There wasn't even a Jewish state. What do they want then? What bothers Arabs? Jews bother Arabs. In 1929, 67 Jews were murdered in one day in Hebron. What was bothering the Arabs then? Ask Peace Now. Go across the street later and speak to Peace Now and say, what's the obstacle to peace? And they'll tell you, the occupied lands of 1967. Now I realize what was bothering the Arabs in 1929. The occupied lands of 1967. Of course. Why didn't... They are clever, those Peace Now people. They are indeed clever. Geniuses. Brilliant. They hate us. And I understand them. They believe the country belongs to them. So they're wrong, but I understand them. And the issue is not 1967 or 1947. The issue is a Jewish state of any kind, of any form, and of any shape. The Arabs don't want to go back only to Shechem. They want to go back to Yaffo, and to Ramle, and to Lud, and to Akko. There isn't one Arab refugee in Lebanon who comes from Judean Samaria, the West Bank. Not one. They all come from the Galil, the Galilee, and from Haifa. What a pity that Rabbi Schulweis isn't here. I might teach him a little bit of Jewishness. The question is, how many Arabs are there going to be in Israel in 10 years? Without war. With peace. Peace. Let's assume tomorrow morning that God gives us a great miracle. And Arafat does tshuva. He does penitence. And he cries out to the Arabs of Israel, make love, not war. And every night they do just that. They make love, Not war. And they sit quietly and peacefully like saints. How many Arabs will there be in Israel in 10 years? The Arabs have many, many children, and we, the Jews, in our true insanity, we pay them for every baby. We give them a check each month for every baby from Bituach Leumi, from National Insurance. One baby, one check. Two babies, two checks. 10 babies, a book of checks. If you want to see a tourist site, which the American Jewish Congress will never take you to, the next time you're in Israel, on the 20th of each month, go to the main post office on Jaffa Road in Jerusalem and watch the hundreds of Arabs lined up to cash their checks and see how many checks each one has. 10, 12, 15, 18. My God. I proposed a bill in Knesset to transfer the Mossad of Bituach Leumi, the National Insurance Institute, from the government to the Jewish agency, and then pay only to Jews. It's a pity that you don't run the Knesset, because those that ran the Knesset said the bill is racist and we won't even table it. We are insane, mad. There is a contradiction, whether we like it or not, between a Jewish state, between Zionism and Western democracy. The Declaration of Independence of Israel says the following: Anu machrizim bezot al hakamat medina yehudit. We hereby proclaim a Jewish state. What does that mean? What does a Jewish state mean? It means at least a state with a majority of Jews. Only if we have a majority, only then are we masters of our fate. Can we determine what the state will be? Only then are we not dependent once again, as we have been for 2,000 years, on the goodness and the tolerance of other peoples. So a Jewish state means a state with a majority of Jews. It then goes on to say equal political rights for all its inhabitants, regardless of faith. What does that mean? That means democracy. That means whoever, it doesn't matter, Jew or non-Jew, everything's equal. Was there ever a greater contradiction? I pose the question to you, just as I have posed the question now for months to Rabbi Schulweis. Do the Arabs have a right to sit quietly and peacefully and be a majority in Israel? Yes or no? That's the question that he can't answer. If you're a Zionist, the answer is, of course, no. If you're a Schulweis, you're not sure. You can't answer. Because if you say yes, they have a right, then you're an anti-Zionist. If you say no, then you're Kahane, except a little backward. That's the problem, and it is a real problem. The Arabs are growing, are multiplying rapidly. And Jewish women don't have babies, but Jewish women are good. They read about overpopulation in Pakistan, so out of sympathy, they stop having babies. Aliyah? What Aliyah? Who's going to Israel? Your local Jewish leaders here? They lived in Beverly Hills and they'll be buried in Beverly Hills. Not only are Jews not going to Israel, Jews are leaving Israel. The great dream is green card, which is Hebrew for green card. How many Jews will be there in Israel? How many Arabs will there be in Israel in 10 years? How many Arabs will sit in the Knesset in Israel in 10 years? How many Arabs will sit on Vadat Hachutz Bitachon, on the Committee of Defense and Security, listening to a top secret report from the Chief of Staff? Maybe the Chief of Staff will be an Arab. Why not? What are you, fascists? Don't you understand the problem? Can't you see the problem? Today the Galilee has a majority of Arabs. Today already, the Galil has a majority of Arabs. Not only the Galilee, Wadi Ara, that area in the heart of Israel. When you travel from Afula, Hadera, you pass nothing but Arab villages. The little triangle, that strip of land directly behind the coastal plain, behind Petach Tikva and Kfar and Ra'anana, you have Arab villages of Baka and Taiba and Tira and Kfar Qasim. Do you know what is happening there? I don't hate Arabs. I love Jews. But I don't intend to sit quietly by while Arabs intend to liquidate my state either by bullets or by babies. I want an exchange of populations. Beginning in 1948, 800,000 Sephardic Jews from Arab countries fled the Arab countries and came to Israel. That was good. That was phase one. Now we've come to phase two. We took in the Jews from Arab countries. Now let's give the Arabs from the Jewish country. And is that not exactly what happened in 1922 between the governments of Greece and Turkey? They exchanged over 2 million Greeks and Turks. And in 1947, when India and Pakistan came into being, 18 million Hindus and Muslims exchanged. And what happened in 1945 with the Poles and the Czechs? The Poles and the Czechs in 1945, right after World War II, expelled 12 million ethnic Germans. You know why? If you know anything about pre-World War II history, you know what the Germans in the Sudetenland and Silesia and Danzig did as a fifth column. And so after suffering what they suffered, the Poles and Czechs, right after the war, decided in their own way never again. And so they threw out 12 million people. Stop telling Polish jokes. They're not dumb. Start telling Jewish jokes. And that expulsion was ratified at Potsdam by Truman and by Attlee and by Stalin. I want an exchange of populations. I want to offer the Arabs who are willing to leave quietly, just leave quickly and quietly without trouble, compensation for their property, which is more than they offered the Jews who fled Arab countries, who paid them a penny for the property that they left behind. And so we will offer them compensation, but not total compensation. 10% will stay in a special fund which will be given to the Jews who fled Arab countries for the property that they left behind. And any Arab who is not ready to leave willingly, I'm not asking him. The option is you are going to leave. The question is how, with money or without. If they won't leave readily, willingly, I'll throw them out. And for all the fools who say, but isn't that what Hitler did? My God! As if the Jews of Germany were saying, this country's really ours. The Germans took it from us. When we become a majority, we'll take it back and call it Israel. That's what the German Jew said. The German Jew wanted to be nothing more than the best German who ever lived. But the Arab of Israel is not interested in being a Jew or an Israeli. He does believe it's his country that was stolen. And he's waiting for that day when somehow, bullets, baby, somehow, he will take that country. That's a parallel. That's an equation. My God. People ask, but how can you do it? There are always people who say, but how can you really do it? Let me tell you how I can do it by giving you a little background story. 3 years ago, I served in the army in Samaria on the West Bank. In Ramallah, the Arabs rioted. So they sent me there to put down the riots. Now I want you to know that not 5 minutes passed, the word spread through that town like lightning. Kahane's here. The rioting stopped. It's important that every one of you know what the name Kahane means to the Arabs. It means terror. They're afraid. And that's the only language they understand. And for those nice Jews sitting here who say, that's terrible, let me just repeat what Moshe Aarons once said to a group of UJA givers in Jerusalem. One Jew got up and he said, why must there always be war? Why can't we sit down with the Arabs, coffee and cake, and we work the problem out? And he said, sir, this is the Middle East, not the Middle West. That's right. It's the Middle East. And that's what the Arabs know and understand. If you're good to them, you're not good, you're weak. And if you're weak, you're dead. And if you're strong, they listen to you. I don't expect them to love me. I'm not the kind of Jew who walks around begging people to love him. I'm sick and tired of being... You know when people love us? After every Holocaust. That's when they love us. That's when they love us. That's when they give us plaques and monuments, and Jimmy Carter gives us a Holocaust commission. Well, I'm tired of Kaddish, and I'm tired of Yortzites, and I'm tired of plaques. And I don't want love, I want respect. So how will we get them to leave? Picture, if with God's help in 3 years, 4 years, the Arab wakes up, puts on the radio and hears on the news that the new prime minister is Kahane. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? Can you imagine what goes through his heart and his mind? Do you remember when Begin won in 1977? The Arabs sat for 3 months in terror. Chaval, the pity was that Begin already was not Begin. But one thing I promise you, that Kahane will always be Kahane. And so they will leave, they will leave, they will leave. They'll beg me to let them go. And I'm big about it, I will. Will this bring peace? Of course not. It will bring survival. Survival. Peace? I don't know if there will be peace. Who says that every problem necessarily has a solution? My little grandchild is 4. He thinks that every problem has answers to it. When by the time that he's 5, he'll grow up and know that that's not true. Maybe by the time Peace Now reaches 55, they may also learn the same lesson. I hope there will be peace. I want peace more than Rabbi Schulweiss. I don't live in the valley. I live in Israel. I serve in the army. My son is in the army. My son-in-law is in the army. I don't want peace. Schulweiss wants peace. Of course I want peace, but I'm not a fool. The Arabs don't want peace. They never wanted peace. And there's no difference between a Hussein and Arafat. Who gives up the West Bank and East Jerusalem. I remember in 1967, a day before the Six-Day War broke out, who do you think had the West Bank and East Jerusalem? The Hadassah? The Federation? King Hussein had it, and he went to war. If someone has East Jerusalem and he goes to war, could it be that he wants West Jerusalem? Could it be? Could it be? Of course that's what he wanted, and North Tel Aviv and West Haifa. Of course that's what he wanted. And Jordan goes to war when it thinks it can win a war. He wants peace? Wonderful. I want peace too. Sign a peace treaty and you'll have peace. I should give up land? The Arabs start 5 wars. They lose 5 wars and they dictate terms to me? What loser dictates terms to a winner? You want peace? Sign at the present boundaries and sit quietly. Because if, God forbid, you start another war and you lose that one too, you'll also lose Jordan to us, because that's also part of Israel. There's going to be an election sooner than we think. The whole point of this Paris peace plan is only one thing: to bring down the government of Israel. To force the Likud to drop out of the government in order that Shimon Peres should not have to keep his promise to Shamir to give up the prime ministership. If anyone ever believed Shimon Peres when he promised that he would turn over the government, you don't know who Shimon Peres is. So there's going to be an election. This government will fall in a month, 2 months. This odd couple is getting divorced. In 3 months from that date, or 4 months, there will be an election. The most important election in Israel's history. The latest poll came out in Israel, which showed that in any new election, the Kach movement would get 12 seats. But that's not true. That's not an accurate poll. Because in Israel, there are tens of thousands of people who are afraid to admit publicly that they're going to vote Kach. But they will vote Kach quietly. And furthermore, I'm not interested in 12 seats. I'm going for the whole ball game. I want in this next government already to have a government that is composed of Kahane and Arik Sharon and Raful, and then you will see what the government is in Israel. I want a government that will change the face of Israel. I want an educational system, a school system, which will teach young Jews Jewish pride, which will teach young Jews their zehut, identity. Know who you are. Know from whence you come. so that you'll also know where you're going. Because one who doesn't know his past has no future. I want Judaism taught in the schools of Israel, because without Judaism, then Zionism is sterile, it's lost, it's barren of any meaning. I want to state, and this will be one of our conditions, immediate conditions for any government, the immediate freeing of any Jew sitting in prison now who committed a crime on behalf of the Jewish people. I am not going to sit quietly by while some of the finest Jews in Israel sit in prison for doing crimes. Crimes? These are the greatest Maccabees of our time. Jews are killed weekly, and the government sits weekly. What do we want from them? You try and live in a settlement, and every single day cars are stoned and side bombs, and Jews are attacked, and Jews are shot, and nothing happens. What was their crime? They bombed the 2 Arab mayors. 2 greater Jew haters never lived. And we sit and we weep for them. For Bassam Shaka, may his name be cursed and erased. He was the political head of the PLO on the West Bank. When I heard that he had been bombed, I stood up and I shouted, Shechiyanu v'kiyimanu v'giyanu lazman hazeh. Terrorists. Shamir gets up now and he says, we must free them. You must free them. And who arrested them? And who jailed them? And who tried them? And who imprisoned them? If not you, Shamir. Let me tell you the story of a Jew named David Raziel. Many of you have heard his name. Many of you haven't. So he is a Jewish national hero. There is a stamp in Israel with his face on it, David Raziel. There is a settlement in Israel named after him, Hamat Raziel. There are streets in Israel named after him, Rehov Raziel. How does one become a national hero? Listen. In 1936, Arab rioting broke out in Eretz Yisrael. And for 3 years it went on. And Jews were murdered every day, every day. 510 Jews murdered in 3 years. The official Jewish policy was havlaga. Havlaga? Self-restraint. Self-restraint. We don't do what they do. We are better than they. Indeed, we were better, deader, but better. We don't sink to their level. We sank 6 feet below their level. They murdered, we buried. They murdered, we buried. David Raziel was the first head of the Irgun. He was a student in Merkaz Arav Kook, a yeshiva student. That was his background. And he knew that in Judaism there is no such concept as havlaga. There is a concept known as haba lo gechash kem lo go. If one comes to slay you, slay him first. And so, listen to how David Raziel started on his way to becoming a national hero with a stamp, a settlement, and streets named after him. In 1937, as the riots just went on unchecked and Jews were murdered every single day, David Raziel made a bomb, B-O-M-B, bomb. And he placed the bomb in a basket. And he took the basket with the bomb to the Arab shuk, the Arab marketplace in Jerusalem. And he placed it there. And he walked away. And the bomb went off, it exploded, and Arabs died. And panic spread through. And the same thing happened in Jaffa, in Haifa. Is it a good thing? It's not a good thing. Is it a mitzvah? It's a mitzvah. And how many people here who are upset at killing innocent Arabs were upset in World War II when Allied bombers went over German cities, 1,000 bombers every single night, and bombed those cities? Who do you think they were killing there? Generals? SS troops? We're at war with a people, an entire people that was committed to wiping out freedom. And so we went to crush that people and break their spine, their morale, their will to fight. Was there one Jew that picketed that demonstrated against that said, but we're killing women and children? In those days, Jews were normal. My son served in Lebanon. He's in artillery. And they received orders that in case a PLO encampment was in a village, that they were not allowed to give the infantry fire cover, lest they kill innocent women and children. Do you know how many Jewish boys died because of that insane order? One Jewish soldier was worth more to me than all the Arabs of Lebanon. What a perverted morality. What perverted ethics. What murderers we are. We murdered our own. The election is coming. And with God's help, we are going to be the third largest party in the Knesset. This is a letter sent out on October the 14th from the New Israel Fund. That is the main fund for Peace Now. It raises money for them and organizations that back them. It raises money here. And it speaks about Kahanism. And it says, it's written by a Rabbi Jonathan Perlman. At our board meeting next month, we will authorize $200,000 in grants to those organizations who are fighting Meir Kahane. The first installment of what we expect will be $1 million in allocations this year. Do you know what that means? The question is, you can't vote in this election because you live here. But we need your help. We don't have the $1 million that the Beverly Hill type Jews have to give to these people. We need funds because the choice in this election is not between Kahane and Likud. It's between Kahane and the PLO. That's what this election is. If, God forbid, we can't attain power, I want you to know that in 10 years, there will be a coalition government in Israel between the Arabs and the extreme left. And there will go Israel. So you support us and you back us. What will you be saving your money for if, God forbid, Israel goes under? Don't cheer me and don't clap me and don't say, Kahane, Kahane. I don't need that. We need support. We need money. We need funds. I have the votes there. I have the people there. My overwhelming backing comes from Sephardic Jews, the ones who didn't learn about Arabs in a seminar at UCLA. They and their parents lived with Arabs. lived under Arabs. They know what Arabs are. It's not to say that it's only they that vote. Huge, great numbers of Ashkenazi Jews are finally awakening and becoming normal. And of course there's backing for us. The young Jews of Israel, they support us, despite the fact that the democratic government of Israel has banned me from appearing on any radio programs or TV programs, despite the fact that I've been banned from speaking in schools. Despite all of this, it's the young Jew that we have. That's the future. I want to finish with a story that I always used to finish my speeches with when I founded JDL. It's an important story. It's a good story. One to remember. The Talmud tells us that when God wanted to give the Torah to the Jewish people, all the mountains, the mightiest mountains, the highest mountains, the loftiest mountains, all of them came to God and begged him, give me the honor. I want the honor. Give the Torah on my peak. And God said, no. I have a small mountain. His name is Sinai. And I'm going to give the Torah on that mountain, on that small mountain, to teach the Jew a lesson, to teach the Jew to be humble. That's the story. Nice story, goes over well with shul-wise. Now, to be humble. The Gera Rebbe, the Rebbe of Gur, studied this particular portion of the Talmud, and he asked a good question. A question which I'm sure is obvious to many, many people here already. And he said, there's something wrong here. If God wanted to teach the Jew to be humble, why didn't he give the Torah in a valley? It's about the most humble place that one can imagine. You don't get lower than a valley. So he answered the question with a tremendous answer, and he said, God wanted to teach the Jews two lessons. One, be humble. Two, don't be too humble. Never be a valley. Jews aren't that. Don't let people stamp on you and trample on you and stomp on you. That's not the Jewish way. There is no mitzvah to be stepped upon. Nothing good came out of Auschwitz. Nothing good. It's better to be a winner than to be a loser. It's better to live than die. And it's better to have a Jewish state that is hated by the whole world than an Auschwitz that's loved by it. I know that. Faith in God, faith in the God of Israel, and a strong Jewish hand, that's the way to bring the Messiah.
We are going to have a question and answer period. Here's a man with a check already. You can applaud, certainly. We're going to have a question and answer period here, but the rabbi wants me to get on with this very quickly. Recently, the United States government took the rabbi's citizenship away. Of all people, the ACLU ran to the rabbi's defense, not at his bit, said, this guy's on a roll, and that he gets most of the money that funds that roll here. But I got to tell you one thing. From the little pushkas in the synagogues 5 and 6 and 7 years ago, where we used to get 50 cents, $1, it has blossomed. But so has the movement. Kach and Kach International, give as much as you possibly can. Because for the one time in your life, when you know that you have given, you will know where the money is going. You have to have a voice in Israel. The voice is Rabbi Kahane. Please give as much as you possibly can. There'll be people around who are going to give out these envelopes. Make